what got you interested in going to business school?
Yeah, the classic question.
Yeah,
So attending an MBA, I'd say it's a very personal choice.
yeah.
For me, I had aspirations of growing into a technology leader. And at Amazon, I noticed a lot of my favorite managers, a lot of I thought really organized and competent managers, and a lot of the leadership of the company had MBAs.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today I'm talking to Josh Rad, who is a product manager and has worked in product management for a while. Currently, he's a principal technical product manager at Northbeam, and he's held previous senior product manager roles at Amazon and also has a finance background. He's also graduated from Harvard Business School, so it is going to be a really interesting conversation to understand how he's made decisions throughout his career and how he comes up with ideas of what to do next. Josh, good to have you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Loved watching this channel for the first couple of videos you've done, so I'm excited to be on here.
So I'm going to jump right into it, and I would love to, go back to your undergrad days at Penn, and you were studying economics. And I'm curious, what were you thinking of doing after graduation?
At Penn, a lot of the student body enters finance and consulting. I got pretty swept up in that. I thought that was my career path. Um,
Mhm.
Also, those industries are really machines and built to recruit college students, whereas tech, especially back then, wasn't. Tech is an industry that really values skills and experience over time. So there
Mhm.
wasn't really as many straight out of college tech programs, and my mind just wasn't there. And so I wanted to work in finance.
Got it. Got it. And you got an opportunity to work in finance at JP Morgan as a summer intern, but it was actually a product management role. So, what
Yeah,
was that experience like?
yeah, absolutely. That one's one I get questions about every now and then. So, JP Morgan obviously has its, its big finance functions, sales and trading, investment banking. There's also like a less well-known investor services division, and
Hmm.
here this division of the bank was composed of a bunch of different products, and these products supported different functions of the bank in their revenue generating finance functions. So
Hmm.
I was on a hedge fund services team. The specific product was the collateral management product. It was very focused on markets and trading, and so it wasn't really a typical PM role that you think
Right.
of at a tech company. But it was still a cool experience to kind of work on something a little bit more technical at a big bank.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great experience. And that was your junior internship?
Right.
Okay. No, that's amazing. And so, given you studied economics in undergrad and you graduated from Penn, you then went on to work in investment banking right out of college. So, I'm curious, what was then the motivation to pivot into tech just a couple of years later?
Yeah, absolutely. So spent 2 years in investment banking. Realized pretty quickly that the advisory and sales work wasn't really for me, and I was more
Mm.
passionate about learning, building, and creating businesses. I'd say this came from I was at a middle market bank, so I was on calls with management teams, CEOs, and I felt like the problems they were thinking about were just a little bit more interesting than the problems that I was working on, which was
Mhm.
building a financial model or putting a pitch deck together. So at the time, I just decided to do a really expansive job search when I knew I wasn't going to stay in banking. And ultimately, I talked to alumni from Penn, learned about the retail management program at Amazon, and ended up there.
Awesome. Okay. So once you moved into a tech role at Amazon, was there a set of skill sets that you were bringing with you that helped you make that transition? Because it is a pretty big move to go from finance to like one of the biggest tech companies in the world, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. So joining the consumer retail division of Amazon was a really good segue for me.
Hmm.
I was somewhat fortunate in that I ended up connecting with someone who talked about this program as if like it was kind of the business person's entry point into Amazon, and it
Hmm.
this kind of retail team hired really broadly from a lot of different backgrounds, people with marketing or retail backgrounds or finance backgrounds. So I was kind of in the finance bucket. And so that I would say the thing that Amazon valued was comfort with numbers and analytical qualities. So it wasn't really a tech role as much as it was like a retail marketing ops role at Amazon. It was probably the modeling that kind of stood out the most to who hired me at Amazon. It was the comfort with numbers, dealing with numbers, uh, dealing with spreadsheets. That was a skill that Amazon valued, especially on this retail management team.
At this point, you've had a couple of years in investment banking under your belt, and then now you are at Amazon in an online retail manager role. So what was the next move for you? What were you thinking of doing next?
Yeah, so I was at Amazon for about a year and a half on this team. And once you're at a place like Amazon, you start to learn about all the different areas the company is innovating in, the different roles within tech. When I first started, I didn't exactly know what like an Amazon product manager did. But after about a year and a half, I started to learn about the various roles of the company and the various teams. And so the North Star that kind of drove me was just a desire, an insatiable desire to get closer to technical topics and building things. And I felt like the retail team wasn't allowing me to scratch that itch ultimately. So I started doing a job search.
You were in a product marketing role after your online retail manager role, and you were working on the cloud computing side of the business at this time. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was working on the cloud computing side of the business. Exactly.
Yeah. And so for, those who might not know about the cloud computing side of AWS, which is a market leader, what would you quickly summarize it as?
AWS primary, it's cloud services for all types of companies. The three major like pillars of the cloud are compute, storage, and networking. And so almost every business in the world needs resources for compute, storage, and for networking. And AWS was kind of the pioneer in this, where they kind of, instead of needing to install a bunch of on-premise servers to manage this for you, AWS outsourced that to the cloud and became a huge moneymaker for Amazon. I was on the storage side.
That's awesome. So many people are looking to make a move from product marketing to product management. And I see that you did that in your role in the cloud computing team. So what is, I guess, some of the advice you would give on the core skills you need to develop to get to the PM role?
Yeah. This is a really, I think, important question. I think I have specific things I did here. So in my product marketing role, I really made an emphasis to get close to the product management team I was working with. I'd say even more so than the other PMMs around me and on my team. In fact, I have to give really big credit to the general manager of the product management team that I supported. His name was Ashish Alakar. And he was the general manager of the product that I worked on. And he really encouraged a product-centric style of PMMing as opposed to like a marketing-centric style, which some others adopt. He encouraged me to sit with his PM team often, constantly soak up knowledge from them, and just learn from them. And so I'd say overall, like, a quick bit of advice here is like, whatever role you are, whether it's PMM or another role, like, I would say getting closer to PMs and closer to engineers and trying to develop valuable insights about the customer for them is really valuable, because you're almost doing the PM job for them. And so that type of experience is either going to eventually create an opportunity for you to internally rotate or talk to another PM hiring team and allow you to kind of demonstrate your passion and prowess for like understanding user problems. And that's ultimately the route I took. I kind of developed user empathy on that team, took that to another PM hiring manager and talked about it.
Nice. And did that process take months, weeks? What was that journey like to actually move into that new role?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'd say, the good thing about being at a large company that encourages internal mobility is that my process, while during the time during the time I was doing it, it felt like a long time. It was actually quite quick. I'd say probably, um, from the point I started actively reaching out and talking to hiring leaders, to
Hmm.
the point where I received an offer was probably like 3 to 4 months. Uh,
Nice.
I will say that was because I probably spoke to 30, 40, 50
Yeah.
hiring managers. And, being at a large company, it's easy to just kind of look in the internal kind of like directory and just reach out and get coffee with folks.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. Lots of conversations, lots of rejections, lots of no's. And finally
Yeah.
I said yes.
And just staying persistent, right?
Yeah.
And this is such a important topic, and this is a question I get a lot.
Yeah.
What ultimately were the considerations that these hiring managers were making? And then I guess in a better way to ask this, what were the most common reasons you think that you weren't able to get a role, right?
Unfortunately, with the PM function, a lot of hiring managers just need someone to have done it before and come in and um, just operate autonomously. This isn't always true, but some, overworked, stressed hiring manager with leadership on his back, like sometimes just needs that type of person to come in with that knows what the role is about.
Right.
Uh, I think the most common reasons, your second point about most common reasons for um, getting a no were just simply like you would have to learn the role from the ground up, and I need someone to kind of operate at a more senior level immediately.
Yep.
But I would add that the thing that made them always willing to talk and semi interested and kind of like it was a lot. Oftentimes, it was like let's stay in touch for after you do get some experience.
Right.
It was always it's kind of and I can get into kind of the question around like the traits of a good PM, but like really I think intellectual curiosity and just wanting to understand the why and the how for how things work was really valuable in these conversations, and it always led to them sort of being open to keeping the conversation going. um,
Mhm.
and yeah, just a desire to learn about the customer, desire to learn, get deep into the technology, understand the problems surrounding the product and the industry were the things that resonated. But yeah.
That's awesome. It's always good to have those kind of, even if it's a no, they become mentors in some ways, or just another connection that you can always reach back out to and help each other in some way. So that's really awesome that you had that experience. And so then at this point, you've had the product manager experience under your belt officially, and you were also able to move into a more senior role as a senior technical product manager during your time at AWS. So you did a lot within 4 years. And so what helped you, I guess, move to that next level? And what were the things that you were doing that the team saw as valuable?
Yeah. So initially, like getting in, this gets into kind of the kind of quirkiness of Amazon's titles and descriptions. But I was a marketing product manager when I was on the product marketing team, and then I became a product manager, but I was on a technical product management team.
Hmm.
However, I was not yet I was not yet, I had to earn the technical title. So basically two things happened. I had to earn the technical title, like to become a technical product manager. And then the next level was a senior technical product manager. So
Hmm.
I'd say after 1 year on the team, that was when I kind of got elevated to the technical title, and that required um, that required just showing prowess in working with engineers and showing that you were able to work side by side with engineers and ship a feature and speak in detail about the feature and all the technical considerations around it. Um, you don't need to be like an absolute expert in making architectural decisions, but that type of comfort with technical discussion
Hmm.
is really valued in not every single PM role out there, but at least the one I was on, especially in AWS. And then the second part of like moving up into becoming a more senior PM, that happened about after close to 2 years on the team. It was about a year and 8 or 9 months, and that was I'd say working on like a larger scope. It's all about scope. I think that's kind of what gets you rewarded at a big company like Amazon. And
Mhm.
so after about a year on a team, I got placed on a much more wider scoped product launch and release um, that was essentially scoped for like, leadership level reviews. And that combined with, I'd say if I want to hone down on a skill that I think really helped me get promoted was communication and writing ability. So
Mhm.
Amazon has a really notorious WBR process, which is known as weekly business reviews. And so every week, each team must prepare a very concise one-pager document on exactly what's going on with the business, state of the business, what happened last week, what do we expect going forward. And
Mhm.
I mean, you have like 10 to 20 people editing every single word on this type of document before it gets sent up the chain.
Mhm.
And I took responsibility of that and drove sort of that the crafting of that document,
Mhm.
and which ultimately I think was rewarded by my leadership, because that's a major part of the team and sort of AWS. And this gets into kind of like every company is different, every team is
Right.
different. The team really sort of valued that type. They valued like that was a big responsibility on the team. So
Yeah, that's huge.
that helped. Yeah.
That's huge. You have exposure to leadership, all the different PMs and engineers who are reviewing and reading this document. So that level of comfort with technical knowledge, plus the understanding the state of the business and being able to report on it comfortably, is like very impressive. So it makes sense that your scope broadened and then you're able to get that leadership role. All right, so at this point, most people would be pretty happy with where they are, and you wanted to do more things. You wanted to learn more. So I'm curious, what got you interested in going to business school?
Yeah. Yeah, the classic question.
Yeah.
So attending an MBA, I'd say it's a very personal choice.
Yeah.
For me, I had aspirations of growing into a technology leader, and at Amazon, I noticed a lot of my favorite managers, a lot of the I thought really organized and competent managers, and a lot of the leadership of the company had MBAs. So that was a kind of a slight convincing factor. But also on a personal level, I wanted to step out of the big tech uh, PM career path bubble, and
Mhm.
just get exposure to people across industries and ways of thinking.
Yep.
So that was like the reason for interest.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you were able to attend Harvard Business School, and those 2 years, I'm sure, were, life changing, and you got to meet a lot of people. So if you could, describe it in a couple of sentences looking back, like what was your biggest takeaway in that experience?
Yeah, it was an incredible experience in terms of exposure and network. I've made some good friends. Appreciate kind of some of the big picture thinking and emphasis on communication skills that comes
Mhm.
with an MBA. There's also happy to talk about the other side of that, but yeah, that was kind of like the positive.
Yeah. So the network has been massively, rewarding. Um, and I think that's the biggest thing we always hear. It's not as much about the in class sessions as it is like outside of the classroom and in the hallway and the relationships and some of the trips I see as well, which which seem really fun. So that's good to hear. And then what's really interesting is you wanted to go back into product manager role, but still brought in your experience and exposure. So, what was the decision making process to go work at Northbeam?
At HBS, there's a lot of excitement around being a founder, being an early stage employee. And I knew even coming out of Amazon, I wanted to go to a much smaller company where I'd have a lot of scope. So while I was at business school, I definitely evaluated and thought about a few different career paths, whether it be outside of product, even slightly outside of tech. But ultimately realized like I did really enjoy what I was doing at Amazon, and I wanted to return uh, to become a product manager, but just
Mhm.
at an earlier stage company where I'd have a lot of scope.
Yeah, got it. And now you're a principal technical product manager. So, I'm curious to know what that scope looks like now.
Yeah. Yeah. So startups really interesting. You have to be very flexible and comfortable with uncertainty and constantly changing directions and scope. And so at this moment, to answer your question directly, at this moment right now, the scope is pretty huge. Like I'm the lead product manager for our company. Essentially composes of two products, and I'm the
Mhm.
lead product manager for one of them. And
Mhm.
that product, just to put it in context, that product, like the advantages and challenges of that product and kind of the vision for that product was 9 slides out of 24 in our latest board review deck to investors.
Mhm.
So in that sense, it's the challenge ahead of me is huge, and there is some fun in that for sure.
Cool. So now that in this role, what are you most excited about looking ahead? Where do you think Northbeam is headed, and what do you want to accomplish in the next maybe 5 years?
Quick background on Northbeam: we're a Series A ad tech analytics platform. So we help consumer brands basically measure the ROI and performance of their advertising and marketing across all channels. Um,
Mhm.
we also, I'd say, we're also a bit of a data science product, and that's the product I own right now, where we ingest all the business inputs, financial, marketing spend inputs of a consumer brand, and we'll essentially give them a beautiful dashboard that helps them allocate their marketing dollars most effectively.
Mhm.
And so we just announced a big partnership with Meta
Mhm.
yesterday, and that's been in the works for 3 to 6 months now. So our ability to kind of engage with the giants of the world in terms of just building the best technology possible to measure marketing means that we're kind of getting more well known, like building relevance, which is really important at a startup because
Yeah.
you're kind of fighting for exposure and customers and awareness. For context, for the last year, I've been in a very generalist role, wearing a lot of different hats. I'm actually excited to kind of return to a role that's probably similar to what you're doing right now at Google, which is like you own a product and
Yeah.
you are focused on that product. And so I'm personally excited about um, honing and refining my product management skill set, which is actually something I was not doing all the time for the last year, just because a startup is so crazy and moving in all different directions.
I'm super excited for you. I mean, the partnership with Meta sounds like a big step for the business to be in this leadership role. Also, still earlier, I guess, in your career is really a big opportunity. I think that something we didn't get to cover earlier is probably to talk about, the difference between PMM and PM because you
Yeah.
did get exposure to those roles. So I guess what would you say for those who are trying to decide between those two paths, like what are the big considerations?
Yeah. Yeah. This is a really great question. I think there's a strong self reflection exercise required here. The quick
Mhm.
answer is if you love writing, you love communication, you love telling stories and thinking big picture, PMM could be a really strong fit. If you still like those things, but you're also willing and excited to get into the deep technical weeds, then you can make a strong PM. And so
Mhm.
the key point I would leave people watching this with is if you don't like getting into deep technical conversations or problem solving mode, then PM will probably not be a satisfying career for you.
Got it. That's very straightforward. I like it. And to wrap it up, I actually would love to get your maybe biggest advice that you still think about. Maybe it's a mentor or a manager that helped you grow into a PM role or become a senior PM. Like, what's an advice that you still think about today that you would pass on?
Oh yeah. Um, so yeah, actually think a really good quote I heard once was you don't need to be technical to be a PM, but you need to want to be technical or wish you were technical. And so,
Mhm.
like, what does that mean? I think that means you have to have, just to be like happy and engaged in the role, you have to have really high intellectual curiosity, especially as it relates to technical topics, but really just all topics. And you constantly push others to understand why and how. I think that kind of resonated with me. I think it built especially at least personally speaking, I felt like at Amazon, a lot of hiring managers like were like, "Oh, you don't have an engineering background. You haven't been a developer. You haven't been a technical product manager. Like, you may not be the right fit." So I kind of definitely felt a little bit of an insecurity in not being technical.
Mhm.
And then
Yep.
I think that quote has like really resonated with me. Like the best PMs out there, they're just willing to kind of understand what they need to understand, um,
Mhm.
and and then essentially problem solve and be a strong communicator on top of that. So I think
Mm.
that was I know that's more of a kind of philosophical advice. I think, it's
Yeah.
I'm also happy to maybe try to give tangible advice, but that is what I would say is kind of a quote that just kind of resonated with me over time.
I'm also curious for those who are thinking about going to get an MBA, what are some of the common reasons why people don't actually make the decision to go to MBA programs?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with a really quick like a kind of personal level one. So, I mean, attending an MBA is, especially a full-time 2-year one, is kind of uprooting your life a little bit. You're probably going to move to a new city. You're going to leave your friends behind in whatever city you live in. You're going to leave your career. So, if you're not ready for that emotionally, it's just not probably something you need to do. If you're really happy with where you're at in your life,
Mhm.
kind of your rhythm of things, like an MBA is just a big like change to all that. So it's definitely a reason to not go. I'd also say, just really frankly, that um, if you're in this world of tech and especially the PM career path, like the short term ROI for an MBA is just not there. I'd
Mhm.
say that honestly from my perspective. Like when I was recruiting for PM roles, you're really entirely evaluated based on your prior work experience. And just being really honest, it's not easy to make the 2-year MBA highly relevant to PM recruiting. There's ways, if you really focus, there's ways to do it. Like it's basically a 2-year choose your own adventure. You can choose where to spend time, where to not spend time. But overall, given the climate of campus and what people are thinking about, it's not easy to make those 2 years super relevant to what a PM hiring manager would be looking for. So I'd say I'd wrap it up by saying, like, you definitely don't need one if you are committed to growing a PM career. And I'd argue if your only priority is to be a really strong PM and grow in that career path,
Mhm.
an MBA is not necessary.
Right. That's great. On the side of working at a startup versus a big tech company, what would you say are some of the pros of working at a startup?
First off the bat, like working directly side by side with really smart people on a single problem is fun. Like people aren't in different orgs with different bosses and different incentives. Like everyone wants the same thing, which is to see the company succeed.
Mhm.
Something really like energizing about that.
Mhm.
More pros, there truly is, like, you hear this often, but there really truly is less red tape, less bureaucracy. All the
Mhm.
work you do mostly feels like it matters. You're not just going through the motions like sometimes big tech is kind of susceptible to.
Mhm.
You feel more connected to the success or the failure, either way, of the company in a way that is just not like big tech.
I'm super excited to keep following your journey. And I know a lot of people will find this really resourceful. And if they want to reach out and ask any questions, should we share your LinkedIn or email? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. Just I think LinkedIn's good. That's a good one to share. And yeah, just feel free to message me if you have any questions.
If you have any questions regarding, business school or going to a startup or pivoting into product management or deciding between PMM and PM, all of these topics are going to be, something that Josh can talk about. So please reach out on LinkedIn and we'll add that in the description. All
Cool.
right. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining me and hope you have a great day.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Take care.